The B-17 Flying Fortress was a marvel of engineering, armed to the teeth and capable of delivering devastating payloads. But for the 10-man crew inside, it was no fortress. It was a flying bullseye. And for the ball turret gunner, suspended in a fragile glass and aluminum pod under the belly of this behemoth, life expectancy could be measured in seconds during combat. This is the story of bravery, engineering, and sheer nerve. Let's dive into the perilous, claustrophobic, and oddly heroic world of the ball turret gunner. Buckle up, this ride gets bumpy. The B-17 Flying Fortress wasn't just a plane, it was an icon of World War II. With its hulking frame, bristling with defensive guns, and the ability to carry an impressive payload of bombs, it looked like it meant business, and it delivered. The B-17 played a critical role in crippling the German war machine, dropping over a third of all the bombs that rained down on German soil during the war. If Germany had a no-fly list, the B-17 was at the top. But being a fortress in name didn't make it invincible. The B-17 was big, slow, and easy to spot, which made it a prime target for enemy fighters and anti-aircraft gunners. It was essentially a flying billboard for "shoot here." Despite its armor and defensive capabilities, the odds were stacked against the crews. Missions over enemy territory often turned into aerial gauntlets, with flak bursting like deadly fireworks and enemy fighters swarming like angry hornets. Each B-17 carried a crew of 10, all with distinct roles but a shared fate. They included the pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, and gunner stationed in every possible direction to defend the aircraft. Yet, no matter how many 50 caliber guns bristled from the fortress, the Germans seemed to treat the B-17 like a piñata filled with American resolve. And while every crew member faced danger, some roles were riskier than others. Gunners, for example, were often the most exposed. They stuck out of the aircraft in vulnerable positions, taking the brunt of enemy fire. The ball turret gunner, perched in the belly of the beast, had it the worst. Stuck in a tiny, spinning bubble with no parachute and little more than aluminum and plexiglass between him and certain doom. The Flying Fortress earned its legendary status, but the men who flew and fought in it truly gave it wings. When the B-17 was first rolled out, it was a game-changer for long-range bombing missions. But there was one glaring problem. Its underbelly was wide open to attack. The initial design used a remote-controlled gun system for defense down below, which sounded fancy, but turned out to be more trouble than it was worth. Think of it as trying to swat a fly with a drone piloted via dial-up internet. Great idea, terrible execution. Enter the Sperry ball turret, an engineering marvel that solved the problem of protecting the vulnerable underside of the B-17. By the time the 113th aircraft was built, Boeing engineers had swapped out the clunky remote guns for this spherical little fortress. The turret, made of aluminum and plexiglass, wasn't much bigger than a beach ball. If your idea of a beach ball involved twin 50 caliber machine guns and a hydraulic system, the ball turret's design was impressive. It could rotate a full 360 degrees and tilt downward 90 degrees, allowing gunners to cover the entire area below the plane. Controlled electrically and mounted on the fuselage via a shaft, it was retractable for emergency landings. This meant the turret could tuck itself away so the plane wouldn't squash it during a belly landing. Unfortunately, the same couldn't always be said for the poor soul inside it. The turret was armed with 2 Browning M2 machine guns, each capable of firing 700 to 850 rounds per minute. Ammo was belt-fed from boxes inside the plane, ensuring the gunner could focus on the swarm of enemy fighters without worrying about running dry. Well, at least not too quickly. As brilliant as the design was, it came with one glaring drawback. It was tiny. The gunner had to be small and wiry, able to fold themselves into a fetal position to fit. Inside, there wasn't even room for a parachute, let alone leg room or comfort. But despite its claustrophobia-inducing size, the ball turret quickly became a critical part of the B-17's defense system. So, while it looked like a hamster wheel with firepower, the ball turret was a vital innovation that gave the Flying Fortress a fighting chance. Though it also created one of the most dangerous jobs in aviation history. Climbing into a B-17's ball turret was like voluntarily squeezing yourself into the world's most dangerous snow globe. The turret, just 4 feet in diameter, wasn't designed with comfort in mind. In fact, it wasn't designed with human anatomy in mind either. The gunner had to curl into a fetal position, knees up, back hunched, and head craned, while aiming a pair of deadly 50 caliber machine guns through a sight nestled between their knees. If it sounds like the least relaxing yoga pose ever invented, that's because it was. Once inside, there were no breaks. The gunner spent hours swiveling, scanning the skies for enemy fighters, and trying to keep warm. At altitudes of 25,000 feet, temperatures could plummet to negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 51 degrees Celsius. Frostbite was a constant companion, as the numbing cold that made moving, aiming, and shooting an exercise in sheer willpower. Control of the turret was managed by 2 hand grips for rotation and elevation, each equipped with firing buttons. The feet operated a computing gun sight to help aim at incoming threats. It was a multitasking nightmare, made worse by the fact that your office was a glass bubble sticking out of the plane, exposed to enemy fire, flak, and the occasional bird that really didn't appreciate your presence. Humor aside, the job was mentally taxing too. The gunner had to stay alert for hours, knowing their survival and the safety of the entire crew depended on their ability to hit enemy fighters before they could strike the B-17. It was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, except the mouse was strapped to a giant bomber and the cat was flying at 400 miles per hour with the machine guns blazing. Despite the discomfort and danger, gunners were proud of their role. The turret offered unmatched view of the action, terrifying but breathtaking in its own way. As one veteran put it, you weren't just part of the fight, you were the fight. For all its risks, the ball turret gunner's position was a symbol of bravery, determination, and unflinching grit. If being crammed into a freezing glass bubble while spinning around shooting an enemy plane sounds dangerous, that's because it absolutely was. The ball turret gunner's position wasn't just risky, it was a death-defying act of courage every time the B-17 left the ground. First off, the turret's placement made it the most exposed part of the plane. Dangling underneath the B-17 like a shiny, tempting target, it was the go-to spot for enemy fighters to aim their guns. German planes often attacked from below because the bomber's belly was the least protected area, except for that one brave soul with 2 Browning M2 machine guns and nerves of steel. And while those guns packed a punch, the turret itself didn't. Its shell was made of aluminum and plexiglass, providing about as much protection as a tin can in a hailstorm. The dangers didn't stop at enemy fire. Anti-aircraft flak bursting into shrapnel-filled clouds was a constant threat. A single hit could jam the turret's rotation or hydraulic system, leaving the gunner stranded in a stationary bubble. If the plane had to make a belly landing in this scenario, the turret and whoever was still inside was crushed on impact. And then there was the parachute problem. Unlike the rest of the crew, who kept their parachutes within arm's reach, the ball turret gunner had no room for such luxuries. The parachute was stored in the fuselage near the turret's entry hatch. To use it, the gunner had to exit the turret, a complicated process requiring help from another crew member. In the chaos of combat, where seconds could mean life or death, this was a gamble most gunners didn't have the chance to take. Even during routine missions, the job was grueling. Long hours in the sub-zero temperatures, constantly scanning for threats, and knowing you were the most vulnerable person on the plane took a toll. And yet, these men faced it with bravery and resolve, knowing the survival of their crew often rested on their shoulders, or rather, their cramped knees. To call the ball turret gunner's job dangerous would be an understatement. It was a testament to their courage that they climbed into that bubble at all, knowing the odds were rarely in their favor. Getting into the ball turret wasn't just tricky, it was an exercise in precision and patience. The entry hatch was positioned opposite the guns inside the turret, meaning the gunner had to manually rotate the turret until the hatch aligned with the fuselage. Then, they'd squeeze through the tiny opening like a contortionist auditioning for a very dangerous circus act. The process was so delicate that any deviation from the procedure could lead to injury or even fatal accidents. Exiting the turret was no easier, especially in emergencies. If the plane took heavy damage or started to lose altitude, the gunner had to climb out of the turret, navigate the cramped fuselage, and grab their parachute. That's right, the parachute wasn't in the turret. It was stowed near the entry hatch because the turret's compact design left zero room for extras, not even a life-saving parachute. In a chaotic combat situation where the plane might be spiraling or under heavy fire, this process became a race against time. To make matters worse, exiting the turret often required help from another crew member, which wasn't always feasible in the heat of battle. For the ball turret gunner, survival wasn't just a matter of skill or bravery. It was a logistical challenge, often with no room for error. The ball turret gunner's job wasn't just physically demanding, it was mentally exhausting. Imagine being isolated in a tiny, freezing bubble, thousands of feet above the ground, knowing that every second could be your last. The The constant exposure to enemy fire, flak burst, and the realization that you were the most vulnerable member of the crew created an overwhelming sense of dread. Physically, Ajab was punishing, spending hours curled in a fetal position, gripping the controls, and swiveling to track enemy fighters strained muscles and joints. At 25,000 feet, temperatures dropped to Arctic levels, and despite heated suits, gunners often suffered from frostbite or numbness. The lack of mobility made it nearly impossible to stay warm, and even breathing was a challenge in the thin, freezing air. Psychologically, the stress was relentless. Every mission was a high-stakes game of survival, and the knowledge that so many ball turret gunners didn't make it back only added to the weight. Yet, despite these challenges, they pressed on, motivated by camaraderie, duty, and an unshakable determination to protect their crew. The toll was immense, but the courage displayed by these men was immeasurable. They faced danger head-on, knowing full well the odds, and for that, they earned a place of honor in the annals of history. The ball turret gunner's role may have been one of the riskiest in aviation history, but it also became one of the most iconic. These gunners epitomized the bravery and sacrifice of World War II aircrews. Their position symbolized not just the physical dangers of war, but also the psychological resilience required to face such a harrowing role. Despite the odds, their contributions were invaluable. Their relentless defense of the B-17 Flying Fortress helped ensure that countless bombing missions succeeded, crippling enemy infrastructure and aiding the Allied victory. Many missions that could have been catastrophic for the crew were salvaged by the quick reflexes and steady aim of a ball turret gunner. Today, their legacy lives on in stories, films, and museums dedicated to World War II aviation. The ball turret itself stands as a stark reminder of the ingenuity and sheer audacity required during wartime. It's also a tribute to the men who climbed into that cramped sphere, facing danger head-on so others could return home. Though time has passed, the courage of the ball turret gunners remains a powerful example of what it means to serve with determination and selflessness. Their legacy is not just etched in history books, but in the freedom their sacrifices helped secure. The story of the B-17 ball turret gunner is one of bravery, sacrifice, and unwavering resolve. These men endured incredible hardships, staring death in the face on every mission. Yet, their courage and determination helped shape the outcome of World War II and left a lasting mark on history. If you've been inspired by their story, take a moment to honor their legacy by learning more about the men and machines of World War II. And if you enjoyed this dive into history, or if you just can't resist stories of sheer bravery, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and tap the bell icon to stay updated on more incredible wartime tales.